Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
Cris, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
It's kind of freaky to hear that voice on the other side of the table from me.
With a face.
I will tell you, it's awesome, though.
Thank you.
And humbled.
Thank you.
I'm humbled. Any problem finding a place?
No, not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
We're okay.
Yeah.
So, my friend, there's quite a few areas I want to talk about. Obviously, the rock and roll thing is near and dear to me. We'll get into that. Sure. Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
I know.
That's a bummer.
So
still surprising, although you knew he was sick. When it came over, it hit my 15-year-old self right in the heart.
Yeah. Was he hiding the illness, or not hiding it, but were they kind of being very tight-lipped about it? Because I was surprised that David Lee Roth was even tight-lipped about it, Yeah,
somebody had said to me, I'm surprised he didn't say anything. I said, well, I think when somebody's towards the end, that you respect that. Dave can be an idiot. In a good way.
A lovable idiot.
And flap his gums all the time. But I think knowing how serious he probably knew it was towards the end. I from what I've read, the last couple of months were pretty brutal. So, but boy, what a loss! What a loss to the music community for sure. Music just isn't like that anymore. There aren't any. There's a handful. I can't even really name like one guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
Jack White, when he was on Saturday Night Live. There you go. There is a guy who is a great guitar player, but there's not a lot of really guitar-based rock bands anymore.
Every generation has one or two, they say, but he was multi-generational. He was the game changer.
Yeah, of course. I remember hearing Van Halen's first album at a party, and I'm like, what? What is this? Who is this? And then you saw how cute he was. I'm like, wow, okay, that's well. Then David Lee Roth was like sexy. So, but what he did was just sounded so good. You hear Little Dreamer and I'm like, wow, this is good. And then when you saw him play and the finger, tapping, whoa, Nelly.
Yeah.
Never saw anything like that before.
Did you see the early Van Halen?
Yes, I saw them. First time I saw them was in '81 on the Diver Down tour.
Okay.
And then I've seen them every time since then. Doesn't matter who's singing with them. Gary Cherone.
Gary Cherone.
The janitor at Star Lake, whatever. I saw them all.
He was there for one album, right?
Yes, that was
Mid-90s?
Yeah.
What was the name of that
Didn't
album?
go over very. I couldn't even tell you.
I think Van Halen 3.
Yeah, didn't go over very well though.
Was it really that bad though? I thought the guitar work was pretty good.
Oh well, of course. But if you read any of the books about Van Halen, I love reading the not necessarily bios, but books about bands and things. I read Sammy's book years ago, and if you read about Sammy's perspective of Van Halen, it was very interesting, because Sammy's all about the business. Guy is a genius.
Okay.
A genius in how he ran his life and his business. He's a bazillionaire because of all the crazy things he's done. Tequila, rum, but back in the day he owned apartment complexes.
Okay.
Then he realized with touring, wow, we really kind of need to have a travel agency for rock bands. That's their job. They get rock band from A to Z and wherever they need to go, buses to pick them up, limos, whatever. It was like a full encompassing travel agency for rock bands.
I did not know
He did that. He would ride bikes in the mountains, and he realized we need mountain bikes. So he opened up a mountain bike store. The guy's a genius.
So he's a visionary.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, beyond the music.
Absolutely.
I thought it was an amazing thing when that happened. I don't know what your thoughts were when they announced that. I was a little distraught because I was such a David Lee Roth fan. I didn't get that album that he did in the mid-'80s with the 50s music. He did a Hot and...
Heat Wave or just
like
Gigolo. Oh my God, I love that.
Did you really?
I love Louis Prima. I love that stuff. Yeah, when people say I love all types of music, I seriously do like all types of music. I get it,
but it might have been the fact that my parents were starting to like. I looked at my folks and my parents were digging David Lee Roth. And I was like,
exactly.
It's
like my dad's like, hey, wait a minute, this is Louis Prima. I'm like, no, not Dad, it's David Lee Roth, and he's like, that idiot with a big long. I'm like, yeah, Dad, that's him. You got a poster in your room? Yep, that's him.
Do you remember when you heard that David was leaving, number one, but then MTV was kind of coming in their own then too.
Right.
We were getting information that way. But then when we heard that Sammy was the selection, Did that take you for a loop?
It did, simply for the fact that I had seen Sammy numerous times as the Red
Solo.
Rocker solo.
Yeah. Montrose as well too. I think early on.
Yeah, it was
early on.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
That's when really Van Halen started. It was in the mid '70s. But yeah, with Sammy Hagar, I'm like, ooh, he's such a great solo artist. I mean, you'd go to his show and people would throw things up, and he'd pick it off the stage, and he'd talk about lollipops, condoms, whatever it was, and he was really, really good at that and just really engaging with the crowd. And I was like, okay, how's that gonna carry over to Van Halen? But me, frankly, love Sam, but love Sam as a solo artist. I thought Van Halen's music rocked harder with David Lee Roth. And when you're looking at a lead singer, you want somebody who can be an ass, has swagger, ladies love him, the guys love him, and he just, he's, the poofing the hair up and all that stuff. And
David Lee Roth basically described him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're looking at a lead singer for a rock band, he's the guy you want. He's the guy you want. I mean, he's great. Is he the best singer? No, he's not. But, he had that whole package of... I remember years ago working at DVE, we were, husband and I were coming back from the charity jam one night, and he said, oh, geez, he goes, they need to step it up a little bit and do something different. And I said, I completely agree. I said, if we could get one person, one rock star to possibly come in and be a part of the charity jam, what do you think? And he says, we both looked at each other and said, David Lee Roth. So that was my mission. It took 2-3 years to make it happen, but it happened. And what a show that was. It was so much fun. He's completely off the rails.
Oh, David's nuts.
Oh, yeah. But he's a smart nuts.
No question.
He's very intelligent.
No doubt about that.
And he's still a little out there. But
what a crazy life, though. Like even the last 20 years, like him being the paramedic in New York City.
Yeah, and then dog trainer for like border collies or something like that.
And I don't think he needs the money.
No. So and now he's doing Japanese art. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Yeah, that was on CBS Sunday Morning a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's been on Joe Rogan's show twice, the long form podcast, and I think Joe had him on about 4 months ago. And if you don't like David, I can see where the casual viewer would watch his style and lose their mind, because he is just kind of sometimes difficult to take for a long time.
Right. Yeah. when you interview him, it's kind of like, what David am I going to get?
Okay.
So you get the David who's very funny and silly, and then you get kind of that Dave that is like so intelligent, or he sounds intelligent, but what he's talking about is right field. Yeah. So.
Okay. And I've had a couple of friends that have been in the touring business. A couple of folks that work for Kiss that have also done some solo tours with Dave in supporting roles. And I've heard some stories that he's the closest thing to being bipolar without actually might not be bipolar, if that makes any sense.
No, I would see that. I would see that. Definitely. But
back when Sammy was announced, to me it was interesting that he humbly joined that band. I'm sure the money opportunity was there for him, but he gave up being the top dog or the spotlight guy with the guitar, to probably the world's greatest rock guitar player.
Right.
And I thought that was an act of humility that I don't know a lot of other frontmen would have done at that time.
Well, I don't think Sammy has much of an attitude. I don't think Sammy's very egotistical or anything like that. The times I've met him, he's been very nice. He seemed like, when I saw him as a solo artist, that he seemed like a really down-to-earth guy, and probably realizes that, hey, I'm playing with the best guitar player in the world, probably could learn a thing or two. And they wrote great music together. I mean, Van Halen's music with Sammy was larger than anything David Lee Roth did, but it was
different, though.
Right. Yeah, it was more poppy, the keyboards and all that stuff, and more love songs.
Yeah.
That type of thing. We're not talking about I'm your ice cream man. Stop me from passing by. Get all my flavors, guaranteed to satisfy. So, but yeah, so when you look at, the Van Halen early stuff, it was more about sex and things like that, or hot girls, whereas with Sammy, it was more about love songs. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Were they symptomatic of the time too, the music of the time,
absolutely.
or did they push the music of the time?
I'm not sure about that. I think it was just probably what was happening in music at that time.
Okay.
Trying something different. I'm sure probably the Van Halen brothers were getting a little like, okay, we need to maybe go in a different direction with a different singer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Sammy brings his expertise into songwriting, and that's just what they ended up with.
I have to ask you one question before we get into some other things because I'll forget. Old brain, I'll forget. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Hirsch. And this is a personal question for me, so my dander's up here. I'm going to let you know because I was a member of the KISS Army my whole life.
Absolutely.
Right? And in Pittsburgh here, in the 80s, were a lean time for that band because the makeup came off. And we, for the love of you-know-what, could not get WDVE to play them under any circumstances. There was no request line. If you mentioned KISS, they probably said, sure, we'll get them on. And they would hang up and laugh at us. Why has this town had, I believe, and a lot of other people believe, had a bias toward that band forever? What is it about KISS that doesn't resonate in radio in Pittsburgh? Or am I all wet?
If
I'm
think
all wet, tell me.
it doesn't make sense to me. I started at DVE in '88, and after a year or two, became the music director.
Right.
And I remember Gene and Paul coming on with Scott and Jim in the morning. And I remember them coming in and they sat down and it was all really about how long they stay is how long Scott and Jim feel comfortable with them.
Right.
Well, I mean, the four of them are on the air. They're laughing. They're carrying on. The PD walks by my office. You got to get them off the air. And I'm like, why? They're having fun. I mean, you're hearing stories from Paul and Gene that were hysterical, stuff you never heard before. Yeah. And Scott and Jim are laughing and they're having a great time. And, but we did a lot of stuff with KISS. We did they did that expo out at the Monroeville Expo Mart.
Was there in 95.
Yeah, I did that. We did a private party at Graffiti that night where they played acoustically. Yeah. I mean, I'd met them multiple times backstage. So
I get that part.
Yeah, I mean, we played Domino.
I just don't. It just seemed like this town ignored it. Now, maybe some of the event stuff. Yeah. And you folks were always there at the beginning of every concert. You'd hop on stage and did the promos, which was awesome. But and actually getting their stuff played. I can remember them. I don't know if it was with Hirsch. Was it with Jimmy Roach? I remember Simmons actually questioning it. Made a comment by phone, like, it's funny you having us on, or someone said, "Hey, welcome, Gene." And what's
there's
funny?
Nothing worse when that happens.
He says, "What's funny because we don't get any play in Pittsburgh from all our fans are telling us." Right. But it seemed to be the prevailing thing. Yeah. Maybe it was all in my head.
No,
I don't know.
I maybe there was a time in the 80s. Lick It Up came out.
Yeah. Animal Heaven's on Fire. Tears Are Falling.
Exactly.
All that stuff.
And maybe it was just I wasn't at the station at that time. I couldn't tell you.
See, if she had been there, tell you a different story.
Well, I don't know about that, but I love KISS. I mean, I've seen them multiple times. Their last show was just an absolute blast. I was actually looking forward to seeing them this past summer, but unfortunately, in the situation
they know how to
we're
make
in,
some money.
Yes, they do. Gene Simmons is a promotional machine, but Gene's the one who takes all the flack for that. When, from what I understand, a lot of the decisions made by the band are made by Paul
and have been for a long time.
I follow both of them on Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. And I remember right when I first got on Twitter, I don't know how many years ago this was, the Pirates were in the playoffs. And somebody posted a picture of the Pirates, like 4 Pirates dressed as the guys from KISS. Okay. And I replied back, I shared it and I replied back, hey, you better watch. Gene Simmons sees this. He's going to want a cut of the pie. Lo and behold, Gene Simmons tweets out to me, says, don't you worry your pretty little head about it, Cris. We got it all under control. He says, we have a deal with Major League Baseball. Yeah. Gene's got it taken care of. And I just said, oh my gosh.
Yeah. They don't miss a trick.
He's following things on Twitter. How crazy.
They don't miss a trick. Yeah. The thing with Stanley was the years that we were together, I realized that he was kind of like the creative motor behind the KISS engine.
But the quiet one.
Yes.
Where Gene likes the attention and all.
So my interaction with Paul was from 2006 on. So tell me about any interaction you had with KISS and or Paul Stanley years prior and what your impressions of her.
Oh, I always just thought, to do what they've done. I mean, when I was a kid, they were every mom's nightmare. What were they known as? The Knights of Satan service, and all this stuff. And then when the Phantom was on TV, my parents were like, what the hell is this? What has gone wrong with you, child? Because I was, ever since I was like in 6th grade, huge David Bowie fan. Bowie fan. Posters, all that stuff. I had my hair cut like the pinups in 7th grade. And my mother was like, OMG, what has happened to you? Why are you the one? I'm the youngest of 5. Everybody else does their thing, and here's me. I want to be a DJ, Mom. No. Yes, I do. No. Yes, I do. So it was like always arguments. But, always had posters of rock stars and David Cassidy and all that stuff all over my bedroom walls, and she just thought I was out in left field, but you know.
16 magazine was big. Circus magazine came on the Hit Parader. Those
Hit Parade,
two kind of started.
Yep, and then Circus.
By Rolling Stone once in a while. We never got the good stuff. Like that was more of our.
Well, Rolling Stone was more you know,
intellectuals.
Yes, and political, and talking about marijuana and all that stuff, and
Too young to deal with that.
but I mean, I think Kiss just did some amazing things. I mean, and here we are, how many years later, and they're still doing it, and they do a great job.
It's insane.
You know,
like they just talk about a machine. Just
sure,
doesn't stop. You
absolutely.
know? So, talk about childhood for you and your love of music and how it led on this crazy journey. Wonderful but crazy journey.
Childhood. Gee, I grew up in Whitehall. I'm the youngest of 5, like I said. Had a normal childhood. Hung out with all my friends in my neighborhood, but we'd always sing. We'd always be singing. You know, we had woods behind neighbor's house, and we'd sing songs down while we were trying to find salamanders and stuff. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. And the neighbors would be like, "Well, you kids sound pretty good." I'm like, "My God, were we singing that loud that they could hear us like over the hill?" But just found a love of music. Being the youngest of 5, I have older brothers and a sister that all like different types of music. One brother was all Led Zeppelin, the art rock, if you will, Genesis, yes.
Yeah.
Other brother was more just the Beatles. Really loved the Beatles. My sister was all into the Commodores and Brothers Johnson and Rick James and all that stuff. And then my other brother that's closest to me was more just like rock. And every time I wanted to go see a show, it was like I said to my brother Randy, I wasn't old enough to drive. I'm like, "Okay, I buy the ticket. You have to take me." He goes, "That's fine." So we've been doing this for eons, And,
okay.
So we went to saw Journey back in the 70s and all that type of stuff, and just love music. Played the piano quite poorly, but I did play, and I always wanted to be a DJ because I thought, well, geez, if I can't play an instrument really well, I could still meet rock stars if I'm a DJ, honestly. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, Peter Frampton. I had my hair permed like his.
Wasn't it a great era for music, though?
It was. And I will, people say, "Oh, we're getting old." I'm like, I don't care. I will never trade my age to be 10 years younger, 15 years younger, even 5 years younger, because you know what? Our music was awesome.
It sure was.
It was awesome.
It sure
Everybody, looked like a rock star. Even like in the 80s when I worked at WX, it was all alternative music, so we were talking The Cure, Depeche Mode, those types of bands. But when you went to a show, everybody looked like a rock star. Yeah. Everybody had the makeup, the hair, the Bon Jovi era, the jeans with the cowboy boots with the spurs on them and leather jackets, and guys had crazy hair. They looked just as good as the girls did.
Right.
But everybody looked like somebody, and everybody really got into it. Now you don't see that at shows.
It's different
at all.
Now, huh?
Yeah, if you were to go like to a show like looking like that, they'd probably toss you in the back of a paddy wagon. But I mean, it was an era that I'm glad I grew up in. Had all the one hit wonders from the 70s that were on the radio, and just AM radio, driving to the beach and hearing songs fade in and fade out. I mean, people don't know what that's about.
Yeah, there's almost a romanticism of.
I sound like I'm 90 years old,
no,
by the way.
No, we're the same age. I can travel right down there with you, my friend.
But that's where my love of radio came about too.
Okay.
Was I would listen to disc jockeys, washing the dishes. I loved Roy Fox, who used to be on KDKA.
Roy Fox, he had a crazy laugh. Like Roy Fox, like the intro was a crazy laugh, and he was all night. Like
they're talking politics and stuff. I have no idea what they're talking
Jack
about.
Boga in the morning, right?
But I just thought I liked him. He was very
Roy
funny
Fox.
and stuff, and I'd be doing dishes and listening to him. My mom's like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like, "Roy Fox on KDKA." I don't even know if he's still alive or not, but but I mean, just listening to, of course, Jimmy and Steve.
Yeah.
All the old guys from the the DVE era where they would talk like this, that type of thing.
You want to hear something funny? You'll love this. The reason why I sought out this particular microphone was because I wanted to sound like Jimmy Roach. This is WDVE.
Oh, yeah. Well, he always liked WDVE.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah. When I was offered a job there, I'm like, wow, do I fit the bill or do I have to talk like this? Hi, everybody. So.
That might have had a whole new dimension for you had you done that.
Yes. I can't be sexy.
You might
sexy is not my vocabulary. I am what I am.
out of high school, I mean, even in high school, but besides your love of music, was you in your mind you still want to do the DJ thing? Was there anything else on the horizon besides music for you?
No, it's always been music or animals, but I knew I didn't have the smarts to be a veterinarian, and I really would have loved to have done that, but I just knew I just didn't have the biology degree. You know, taking biology in 10th grade and having to cut something up, I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
Okay.
I said, I will do all the work. My partner had to do all the cutting. I said, I can't do it. And then I was in class, like the next class afterwards, and I put my hand into my purse to grab a pen, and here they used to get I don't know where they found these crickets at for biology class, but they were about 12 inches long, and someone stuck it in my purse, and I put my hand in, and it was on my arm, and I went, ah! And it just went flying
So
across.
I don't think I would bother you. You don't seem that animals would.
Well, I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
It was dead, but it was just it stuck onto my shirt, and I was like, but
frog dissection and all
No,
that
I
stuff.
wouldn't
Don't
touch
break
it.
the bladder, right? Or don't, because there was like, remember that thing you cut
it's a
open? There's
sack.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry.
So, same era. I'm glad that stuff is.
Yeah, but I didn't have.
They don't do that anymore, do they?
I didn't have the smarts to be a veterinarian. Just couldn't do it.
So how? Okay, so you come out of you come out of high school. Like, where's the career path in your brain?
I was looking for colleges that had good radio stations.
College radio. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I went to, I looked at University of South Florida. They had a really good radio program at the time. Bethany, I think, had a good program, and then Cal U had a good program. And I figured, well, Cal U was at least close.
Right.
I'm the only one in my family that went to college, so I wanted to be not too far from my parents, and so I, went to Cal U and was on the radio station there. And
how was college radio?
Oh, it was a blast. I mean, it was. But the crazy thing is that I listen to stations now, and it's like, whoa, you'll never get a job in radio if you can't follow a format, or you can't follow what your boss tells you to do.
Today, you mean?
Yeah. Even years ago, I mean, just like a lot of college stations at the time were very freeform. Mm-hmm. So you would come in with your stack of records that you wanted to play, and you played all of them, and then you went home. Well, no. I mean, when I went to Cal U, our program director, we had coded cards.
Okay.
We had categories.
Oh, it was professional, it sounds like.
Yes, exactly. So we had to play, this song off a 38 Specials album, and then you put the card in the back, and then the next song was your choice, or if you had a new album that came out, the first band I interviewed while I was in college was Night Ranger in 1984.
Okay.
And, so I went and I met them after the show, and I interviewed them, and
Brad Gillis?
Brad Gillis and Jack Blades.
He played with Ozzy.
Yes, he did.
That's weird. What a
Yeah.
diverse two groups there. Anyway, sorry.
So he ended up, I did this interview, so I took it back to the radio station and cut it all up. And then I did like an hour-long special about, Night Ranger and their new album.
Okay.
Midnight Madness. So,
on college radio.
Yes, on college radio.
That's some good college radio.
Yeah, we had a great relationship with the Caesar Engler at the time, and had a connection there, and we were giving away the greatest concert tickets. Rainbow. I sat in a front seat for Rainbow.
Ronnie James.
Yes, and Aldo Nova and Hall & Oates, and it was a lot of fun back then.
Early mid 80s, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what'd you think of New Wave at that time?
Oh, I liked it.
Okay.
I liked it. As a matter of fact, our college radio station would play the B-52's Rock Lobster, and we'd get death threats. Like, kids would be listening, and they say, if you play that song one more time, I'm going to come down and beat you to a pulp. I'm like, really? Lock the door. But yeah. I mean, it was out there, but a lot of that stuff was just starting to creep along, like probably mid-'80s or so, like right when I was ready to graduate. So
there was a lot of blend in that music, though. I mean, it came from rock, right?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean...
Absolutely. I mean, U2.
Yeah.
I mean, U2 just celebrated, their 40th anniversary of their first album, and... I remember, and I even mentioned this on my Facebook page, Cris Winter in the morning, by the way.
Yeah, we'll get there.
It was one of those deals where I remember them strictly being played on our college radio station's Christian show.
Oh, U2. Someone else told me that
they were kind of known as a Christian band in the beginning.
Yeah,
I mean, we were allowed to play them,
right.
but they, I remember the guy that did the Christian show was all about U2. And then they played, there was a band that we played at the college station called Ziggurat, and they were in at the Decade. And then the next night, we all went down to see the Ziggurat show, and then the next night, U2 played there. I'm like,
unbelievable.
Really, U2, Decade,
at
Oakland,
the Decade.
Come on, small stage. And I missed it. So
I saw a Duran Duran show. I was dragged there. I want to say it was 84, 85. 85, 80.
Seven and the Ragged Tiger.
I
tour?
think it was.
And it was a snowstorm?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. It was terrible. That was awful.
The storm was bad.
Yeah, it was ice storm.
But this show actually, as a rocker, and the crazy part about it was, I think a night before, Kiss, it was at the Stanley Theater for the Lick It Up tour.
Oh.
So I went to this Kiss show, and then I take my girlfriend and her little sister to Duran Duran.
Where it's nothing but screaming.
Or right around that time frame. Yeah, but they blew me away. Like, it was so...
Incredibly good band.
Andy Taylor on guitar. Is it Andy Taylor, I think?
Yes.
His brother on drums. And it was just a good,
I mean, John Taylor is a phenomenal bass player.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal bass player.
And Simon's voice, it was a really great rock show and way heavier live than on the album.
Right.
Way heavier. Like, it wasn't a pop show.
No, not at all.
At all.
No.
So, yeah, Duran Duran it kind of opened my eyes like, hey, maybe this alternative, not alternative, but this new wave stuff isn't so bad.
Right, exactly.
Until I went to the Thompson Twins.
Oh, well, I mean, see The Cure, see Robert Smith grab lipstick and just slap it on his face and then walk off, and big white tennis shoes, and his hair is like, whoa. But you
probably loved everything, huh? You loved it all.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You loved it all.
Even bands I don't really care for, there's something about them that you have to appreciate.
Okay. So, the X, it wasn't the X then, Double X was your first
radio gig out of college, yeah.
And was this really kind of pre-alternative? Did you join them like right before alternative kind of hit? Because alternative is a funny word for me.
Yes.
I'm still trying to figure out that definition.
Well, MTV was already around. That started in August of 81. So this station started in June of 86.
120 Minutes was an alternative thing on MTV. Was that kind of a...
I can't remember if that was still on yet or not.
Okay.
I don't remember if that had started yet or not. But the station came from a gentleman that owned us out of New York. We were an adult contemporary station first. We only had a handful of jocks. I was basically just a board op there. And then he came back into town and was like, nope, we're going to switch formats. We're switching it to alternative. But the weird thing about it is how they incorporated the alternative. We started out playing deep cuts from The Who, from Led Zeppelin, from Queen.
Okay.
So we were kind of going after DVE's audience there for a while. And then, The Cure started coming in, and we still played the Queen. We played a lot of David Bowie, like obscure cuts from David Bowie, not Let's Dance or whatever. I mean, we're talking fashion and, John and Emily dancing and things like that. And I am a DJ and just started to play songs like that. And then, kind of get more. And then The Who kind of went away and the Stones kind of went away. And then we kind of built an audience from that.
Yeah, that was the alternative genre created by the record companies, or was it just the groundswell of just listeners?
I think it's probably a little bit of both, simply for the fact that you had such a great alternative scene in New York City, in Soho and in the East Village and in those areas, the Blondies and the Talking Heads and, all those.
So that would be considered, I don't know how to classify things. Like, I don't know what... I know the Pistols and the Ramones were early punk.
But that kind of swelled into... the Talking Heads, and Blondie, yeah. I mean, when I say, I mean now, what is alternative?
Yeah,
it's not really anything anymore because things are now acceptable. You're hearing The Cure on a top 40 station now, whereas back then it was just us playing it. Nobody would touch anything that we were playing, pretty much across the board, unless something really blew up. The one band I think of off the top of my head is the Cutting Crew. I Just Died in Your Arms. We played that as an import. And I remember Dave, the DJ, playing it one night, and I was sitting in the studio with him, and we were just talking, and I was like, wow, this is a really good song. This sounds like a hit to me. And then the next thing you know, 6 months later, it's number one across the board all over the country.
It's turned into a pop song.
Exactly. But it started as an import. We actually got it from the UK. So...
when you were there, it had to be an exciting time. As much as you love music, it had to be an unbelievably exciting time. Did you feel a groundswell of change coming in rock? Like, I'm saying, Pearl Jam. Did you?
Not at that time.
Hadn't happened yet.
No, not at that time.
You didn't think that's where you were headed?
No. I mean, a groundswell, yes. I mean, this is a radio station that still has been off the air for 35 years, and we still do these Double X reunion shows, and people come, I swear to God, all over the country to come to these shows. And all the people that are playing the music are all the bands that were local. that played in the clubs in Pittsburgh back then.
Okay.
There might be 40 of them, but they all come up on stage and they learn 100 songs.
Amazing.
For months, and then they perform all these songs. And it's so much fun. I still get asked more about that than any other radio job I had. It's so weird.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible thing to be a part of because you don't think people are listening. Maybe phones aren't as busy as you'd like them to be or whatever. And you're like, okay, is anybody really listening at this point? But then I went from overnights to working middays. And the first day of my midday shift, program director comes to me and says, hey, Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode is going to call you today. I'm like, what? Depeche Mode? You're kidding me. Like, I had to tell him, I'm sorry, this is my first radio interview, and he couldn't have been nicer.
That is so cool.
And he met him multiple times since then, and just a nice guy. But I mean, that was the type of, we were having the lead singer of the biggest band probably at the time we were playing it,
right,
calling into the radio station. To do an interview. And it was constantly like that. Then they started coming into the radio station. And the people in Millville were like, what the heck are these people? There was a band of girls called I've Got a Fuzzbox, and they had the craziest pink hair, purple hair, green hair. That was long before anybody started dyeing their hair like they do today.
Right.
And these girls got out of this limo, and I got called into the Lincoln Pharmacy the next day, all these elderly people that sit at the counter at coffee. I'd grab a cup of coffee in the morning and talk to all of them, and they're like, Cris, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, fine. Why? And they're like, who are all these people you're hanging out with? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, it's almost like that commercial where the guy walks by with the blue hair. We all see it. Oh my God, she's got blue hair. That's how they were all but these bands would come into town.
Yeah.
We did all kinds of crazy meet and greets with them, and just they were accessible, and they realized that, hey, because of this radio station, we're getting airplay in Pittsburgh. We gotta work with them as well. And we did all kinds of shows with them. And
you must have really inside. You must really love music.
I do,
because I think a lot of us end up being musically rigid based upon what we quote unquote grow up with.
Right.
And that's a seismic shift. By the late 80s, that was much different music generally than what you grew up on.
You're looking at 86, 87, 88. 87, 88 is when now here comes the heavy metal bands. The hair
metal.
bands. And I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I followed this band called Kix.
Yeah, they're off Harrisburg.
Yeah. I have followed them since I was in college in 1981. And I still do. I don't miss a show, but it's just, I love a little bit of I appreciate any band and what they do and how they get an audience or what they're out doing on the road, whatever. And honestly, I will say that what I've seen from Kix back in the early 80s, Poison pretty much stole half of their show.
Someone else told me that.
Yeah, multiple times. It's like, the balloons and all that stuff, guys. Kix did that back in 1981, so you're not doing anything new here, but they had a bigger stage to do it on. So,
speaking of that, do you think it's valid if there's an audience, whether we like it or not? It meets our personal taste or it doesn't. If there's an audience for it, is that its own validity?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. There are times where you're on the air and you don't think that anybody's listening. Like I said, phone calls aren't coming in. But then when something happens, I recently lost my job. I was humbled and I was shocked at how many people reached out to me and said, and still send me emails saying, you know what, with all the craziness that's going on in the world, I really wish you were on the morning show again. And I'm like, well, I do too, but unfortunately that wasn't my call. But it's you don't think people are listening. Prime example, I was on DVE on a Saturday afternoon, and I had this copperhead snake in my yard, and my father-in-law picked it up and put it in a bag, and I don't know what he did with it, but I talked about it on the air. Well, like a week later, in the mail, I get this drawing of this guy making me look like I'm Superwoman with a snake and the sword in my hand, and I'm going to slay this snake. And I just told a silly little story. Never thought.
How cool is that?
Never thought that. Or there was one time I was talking about Burton Cummings from the Guess Who. I'm like, boy, Burton Cummings, haven't heard about him at any time, lately.
Right.
This is before the internet, obviously, where you could Google everything.
Right.
Some guy, was a guy or girl, I can't remember, sent me about a 6-page letter as to everything Burton Cummings has been doing.
Wow.
And you don't think people pay attention, but they really do. They really do.
Yeah, I think do you think the same validity can be said if you're a band as well? Like when the audience is different than a radio station, but if a band, regardless of genre, has an audience, is that validity for them?
It has to be.
Is it enough validity for them? And they can only decide if it's enough, I guess. But I mean, I guess people slag bands. That's part of the great conversation in music.
Sure.
You know, you hate this, you like that.
Right.
And you don't really hate it. You just kind of not your thing.
Right.
But if an audience goes and pays, that's really the only critical analysis that counts, right? Was Gene Simmons always right? Like, the critics don't matter if people are buying.
No, the critics never
if
matter.
They're buying.
The critics never mattered. If you look at all the great music that has come out over the years, and we base on what critics liked or didn't like, we wouldn't have Frampton Comes Alive, every one of us at our age, on 8-track, cassette, album, CD. Yeah. And we also bought the remastered.
Of course.
You know, honestly, Frampton Comes Alive is the one album I have multiple copies on multiple formats.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Lines
critics
on My Face, the live version. Of that
critics
song.
didn't like him. Too pretty boy.
Really?
You know, that
I never
type
knew
of
that.
thing. I mean, I think a lot of times when it came to his looks, it took away from what a great guitar player he really was.
Yeah.
Because now there's somebody like me that's got his poster up on the wall. You know, where I knew he was a good guitar player.
Unbelievable guitar player.
You know, but he was awfully darn cute too.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, that's where critics kind of like lost, and the critics never took Kiss serious.
No,
at all.
Paul told me stories personally.
Sure.
About that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the critics never really matter. It's a critic that's one person's opinion. When you step out on a stage, and if 10 people paid to see you play,
yeah, that's validity to me.
You've done something special.
Right, you've touched somebody.
Exactly.
They're paying. They want to pay to be in your presence or experience.
Right,
live.
and there's nothing more interesting is when, like an Eddie Van Halen passes away, and then you hear stories of how much his music or his guitar playing touched people. I don't care what artist it is. It could be somebody you absolutely despise, but to know that, you know, John Smith from this band wrote this song and it really touched my heart when my father passed away or whatever, that is the validity of being a musician in my eyes.
Yeah.
You know, that is there's no higher compliment than somebody saying, you know, your song got me through a divorce or the death of a loved one or COVID.
Absolutely.
For God's sakes.
Yeah. No.
8 months into it. And a bottle of vodka. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Not today. We're dry today here.
That we are.
But
I mean, that to me is, you want to be...
The validity counts. What matters.
Oh, absolutely.
What matters. Okay.
Critics to me never.
Okay, so on that vein, we're going to hop around a little bit. I'm dying to get your thoughts on the meaning, if there is any, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Jeez, do we have to go there?
Sure we do. We have time.
I think it started off with the right intentions, but I think maybe what they should have done was had your ability to get in should have been a lot longer of a time, or perhaps a little bit more streamlined on who can get in.
Okay.
I mean, rock and roll is different in all kinds of formats, but, you know, when you're letting Madonna in, now you're letting Whitney Houston in, you know, and, you know, when there's so many Bad Company is not in. You know, I would always be screaming on the air, Chicago, not in. A band that, you know, with Tower of Power started that whole horn section thing.
Did. It took Deep Purple forever. It took Kiss forever to get in.
Exactly. And they're still out touring and they're still doing it and they're still creating hits.
Yeah. They should have been in decades ago.
Exactly. How do you ignore that?
Yeah.
And then you know, then some of the bands they do get in. I remember talking about it on the air one day. The Beastie Boys got in. And I was like, well, you know, Beastie Boys, great band, love them. I do. And this girl writes this email to me and just rips me to shreds.
Really?
Saying, you know, you don't know what the Beastie Boys are. And I'm like, I'm always diplomatic, and I like to have a good conversation with somebody.
Of course.
And I was just like, well, wait a second. I said, I saw the Beastie Boys open up for Madonna in 1984.
Right.
And I love them. I said, you're missing the point. I don't don't think that they don't deserve to be in there. But when you have Chicago, Bad Company, blah 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 blah, not in. That's my take. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be in. They do, but I think there's a line of other bands that should be in there before them. That's all.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's a farce to me, I think. It's it kind of turned me sour toward Rolling Stone, unfortunately, because they pretty much created it, the Jan Wenner, and then they mold it the way they want. But it's and I guess any Hall of Fame is going to have detractors, but it really is kind of crazy that we're going to take something that's so rebellious in rock and roll, and the spirit of rock and roll was you can't put it in a box and then label it and look at it as a trophy on a shelf. It's insane to me.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah. And they always seem to be, even with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum, that seems to be, they focus a little bit maybe more on the Doors, the old LA scene, Crosby, Stills, Nash, things like that. Well, what about, the Canadian bands or, ABBA? I don't know, but I think they when they said Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they shouldn't have called it the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They should have called it something else.
Yes.
Or just call the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and we stick with rock and roll,
Yes, because now it's a popular music display. It's all I call it, really.
Exactly.
I mean, and it's, I still think when they tried to induct the Sex Pistols and Johnny Rotten wrote the letter, are you familiar with that?
Yes.
That to me was the greatest
thing
I'd ever seen in my life.
Ozzy Osbourne was dead set against showing up there. I interviewed David Bowie probably, I want to say 2 months before that all went down. He had already been nominated. And this was one of those deals where I was in my office. It was about 4:30 on a work day. And I get a phone call, and it's his record label, and they said, "Hey, would you? We have an opportunity to do an interview with David Bowie within the next half hour. Are you interested?" And I said, "Absolutely.
Wow.
Give me 1 second." I run back to the boss's office. I said, "Hey, listen," I said, "David Bowie's available for an interview, and we have to do it within the next half hour. Are you okay with Sean doing it?" And he says, "No." I'm like, "What? It's David Bowie." He goes, "Sean's not doing it. You're doing it." I'm like, "What?" "No, I can't. So I went in, and we're sitting like this on the Air Studio, and it was Sean was sitting there. I'm like, "Oh my God, Sean, I'm so nervous." I mean, this is my guy.
Got it.
My guy.
Got it.
So I had met him years before that, and I don't get starstruck with people. Because my whole thing is, hey, toilet paper sticks to the bottom of their shoe just like it does mine. So it's like, they're no different than me. But I mean, this was a guy I emulated since I was in 6th grade. So the first time I met him, he came out and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's him. He's right in front of my eyes." And I kept hitting the side of my thigh, like, "Oh my God, that's him. And I was with my husband's friend, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He goes, "You never get like this." I said, "I know. What's wrong with me?" So when he came up to me, the thing that shocked me the most, he wasn't as tall as I thought he was. But he was so sweet, went around, called everybody by their first name, said it was a pleasure to meet them. No pictures, though. So my friend takes my camera, and as I'm walking along talking to him, he slyly snaps pictures. So I take them, to Ritz Camera Center. Remember that? And my husband runs in and gets them developed, and he comes back out, and he's looking through them. I'm like, "So how are they?" He says, "This is so weird." He says, "Look. Between those pictures before that and the pictures after, all of David Bowie's were white." And I was like, "He is a vampire. He is a vampire," And so I never got the picture, but he was very sweet. So I go back to this interview, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Well, it was to me, it was probably one of the best interviews I did because I had zero. I didn't have time to think about it. It was just whatever I felt about him, I asked. Yeah. And I asked him about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I said, "Well, you're nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What are you thinking? What are you going to do? Are you going to play?" He goes, "I won't even show up." I'm like, "What? Why? Don't you think your fans like myself want that?" And he says, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame does not define me as an artist. It does not define my fans. It does not define anything other than just something to get people to go to the museum or to show up at the concert." And I was like, interesting. Ozzy was the same way. Ozzy didn't want anything to do with it. But David Bowie was like, he goes, "People like you define me. My fans define me. whether I get
That's
into
so
the
true.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame does not define whether I'm a great artist or not. I mean,
that's
and
so
this is
true.
the guy that just continually did. I don't think David Bowie would ever had the career he would have had he not been able to constantly change with the times.
What a chameleon.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, and then able to write things of relevance and
absolutely.
at every stage.
And know who to work with. I mean, when he did the Outside album, he worked with Trent Reznor. And that tour was phenomenal.
Go back to the Modern Love. That's Peter Frampton on. Do you know that? Peter Frampton, I think.
Well, actually, no. On
toured with him
that
or something?
album, it was Stevie Ray Vaughan that actually played the guitar on that particular album, Let's Dance.
Okay.
However, it was Peter Frampton that played guitar on the series Moonlight tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Well, but then David Bowie did play on the Glass Spiders tour. Never Let Me Down was the album. I think it was the name of the album. But that's the one that Peter Frampton played on.
Yeah.
But when it came to Let's Dance, he's the one who found Stevie Ray Vaughan. And then when it
I didn't know that.
When it came to touring, he found Luther Vandross as a backup
know that
singer.
either.
Yeah. When they did all Young Americans.
Bowie did. Huh?
Yeah, he was really good at doing that. But the reason why Stevie Ray Vaughan cut ties with him is because David Bowie just wanted to pay scale.
The truth.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the guy. Stevie Ray Vaughan was extremely gifted, and there is a guy who, again, like Eddie Van Halen, just had so many people love what he did and picked up the guitar because of it. So
it's amazing. It does go to show you it's one big tent, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, like, the genres are all jammed in this tent, and they all
Sure.
cross-pollinate.
Sure,
But
absolutely.
the thing with Stevie Ray Vaughan originated with David Bowie. Mm-hmm. And, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
All right,
Bowie
so
was pretty good at finding people like that.
obviously so.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Stevie passed? Do you remember where you were?
Actually, I talked about this on my Facebook page a couple weeks ago. I was getting up that morning because I was working for Michelle doing the midday show on DVE, and at that time we knew there was a helicopter crash. It was
Right.
It was foggy that night. We're not sure. There was talk that Eric Clapton was on that flight. They didn't know who it was. All that. And then as the morning went on, I think maybe about 11 o'clock or so, somebody called into the radio station from one of our sister stations in Wisconsin and said, we just got confirmation it was Stevie Ray Vaughan and then manager or whatever. It was like none of Double Trouble or anybody in his band or anything like that. And it was not Eric Clapton. So, that was a really heavy day because probably 2 months before that, he played out at Star Lake with Joe Cocker. And it was a crazy day because it had rained so hard. I'd never seen it rain like that. And we were all huddled in the DVE van. And the next thing you know, it's pouring so hard that the picnic benches, the wooden picnic benches, were getting lifted up and floating down, the outside part of...
It's a lot of rain.
Yes. And it was like, wow. So we stayed in this van and the next thing you know, it got nice outside and we walked over the hillside and the rain was probably 20 rows deep in front of the stage.
Wow.
And here's Stevie Ray Vaughan's band fly fishing off the stage. Practicing their fly fishing. I'm like, oh my, and I was the
can't
person
make
at the
that
radio
up. That's
station
great.
that always had a camera. Always.
great.
This was long before, obviously cell phones. And I didn't have a camera at that particular show. And I went up and I introduced Joe Cocker. And then I came off stage and I was walking through the corridor, the back stage area. And Stevie Ray Vaughan was out front and he had his hat on and he goes, "Good evening, ma'am." And I said, "Hi, Stevie, how are you?" And he goes, "Doing great, thanks." I said, "Well, great show tonight." And he goes, "Thank you." And, that's that. I
Wow.
had just seen that. I mean, we didn't talk. It was just a Texas,
Yeah.
thing with his hat. And, that was tough.
What a
'Cause
talent.
Talent. And he was just really, he was on his way to really, I thought, great things. He had kicked the drugs and all that stuff and, really found his path and was making so many people happy with his music. And then that happened. So that was really tragic.
Did you go to DVE? Was it 89? 90?
88.
88. Okay, so you caught the tail end of hair metal in the air.
Hair metal was still a huge part of that.
Yeah,
you had
it
Warrant.
It was.
Guns N' Roses came out in
Slaughter.
88.
Oh, Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
a
that
game
was really
changer.
the one that
Were they hair metal though?
Well, they unfortunately got tossed into that.
Yeah.
I mean, when they opened up for Aerosmith at the arena, they blew Aerosmith off the stage.
People have told me that.
I mean, it was just like, wow. I mean, and Steven Tyler's a great frontman, and you think, oh, this is good. But I mean, there was something electrifying about that band that night, and you just knew it was going to be something spectacular. Yeah, they just were so raw and loud.
When did that also has that happened to you prior, where you've seen an up and coming band and you just knew there was an extra level for them, an extra? I saw it in Bon Jovi when I think they opened for Rat.
Right.
And when John jumped off with these boots, jumped off this high level of amplifiers and didn't break his ankle.
Right.
It was, they upstaged Rat that night.
Yeah.
I thought.
I would say probably Night Ranger was one of those bands. When I saw them in '84. They were like that. Journey back in the '70s. I mean, Steve Perry climbed the lighting rig. They opened up for Foreigner. Blew Foreigner off the stage.
Get out.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Trying to think who else. Definitely Guns N' Roses. That was just like one of those shows. It was like,
you
wow.
Just knew it.
Yeah. It was just, I mean, even when we went after like Aerosmith did their encore, we all ran out to the van to grab the DVE stickers.
Right.
We're giving them out. And then all of a sudden it was just like this influx of people. We're all up against the van and we didn't know what to do. So we just grabbed them in 2 stacks and threw them up in the air and just to get out of there. It was just crazy because people were just feeling it was very electrifying.
Yeah.
You know, Depeche Mode was one of those bands, although they weren't really well known here.
Okay.
They had a very special something too, I thought, you know.
Rockers tend to like them. And a lot of, I found back in that era, like people that really loved hard rock or hard rockers, they would secretly also like Depeche Mode. They wouldn't admit it, but they kind of had a broader audience, I thought, than a specific alternative band.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. They've influenced a lot of bands, but you look who, you know, David Gahan says, well, Bowie influenced me, and, you know, you look at the guys from Def Leppard.
Yeah.
Queen and David Bowie, 2 big artists that influenced them as
Right.
far as their musical paths.
Right.
And it's all, well, who influenced David Bowie and who
Right.
who was his influence back in the day, you know, so it all just is, you know, like you said, we're all in like this big tent.
I want to believe that as much as I think the record companies and some fans try to, you know, segregate us in little specific nuances. I don't think you can do that.
No.
Did Kurt Cobain really kill hard rock or heavy metal or hair metal or whatever it was classified at that time?
I would say probably, yeah. There was...
So there's truth to that, then.
I think so. Just because of that whole genre that came out of Seattle, the Pearl Jams and all that stuff, and
there was only a couple, though.
There were a couple, but at that time they were all starting to... Maybe they didn't have record contracts, but
okay.
there was a buzz about Seattle, a big buzz about Seattle.
Okay.
You know, just working with record reps when I was a music director, it's like, hey, you know, there's this band out of Seattle that's doing really well locally. We're looking to sign them. Okay, who are they? And that, you know, it'd be Soundgarden or something like that, you know. But I don't know if, you know, there's another tragedy. What if? I always think when somebody dies young like that, it's like, what would have happened? Would they have continued on? We probably wouldn't have the Foo Fighters, though. You know, and Dave Grohl is just such a talented guy on so many levels, in his writing and his playing and drums and his guitar and all that stuff. You know, we wouldn't have him. But I just think that there was something special that whole sound was.
What was it, though? Can you classify that? Like when you heard Soundgarden. See, I come at it this way. I don't think the Soundgarden tone or the Pearl Jam tone is that much different than really good rock and roll.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The grunge thing, I don't get the label. Now, but when I listen to Kurt Cobain, I kind of understand that it's more rooted in punk. I hear a little bit of the Pistols in there, the Ramones in there. But the rest of it's just rock and roll. Like Pearl Jam to me is a long-going rock and roll band.
Well, that's where the record labels come in and give it a title, the grunge, you know. Well, then all of a sudden, like I was saying about how when you went to a concert, we all look like somebody. Well, now all of a sudden we're wearing shorts and jack boots and flannel shirts with a rock shirt underneath it. You know, that was the style. And the guys had the long curly hair, not the hair metal hair, but, you know, like, you know, Eddie Vedder had. Yeah. And I don't know. It was a groundswell of something, that is for sure. And, you know, like I said, I often wonder what if if he wouldn't have died? What would have happened to that genre of
What would their
music, or
sound
what would
be
they
like?
sound be like?
What would their sound evolved into?
Right, exactly. Or would he have just been like one of those people who's like, you know what, I did it, I'm done, and then he just goes off and
maybe
owns a record store or something like that. I mean, you don't know. We don't know.
You can almost see that happening.
Yeah, you know.
His personal life was really interesting.
Yeah.
With his, I think it was his wife, I think,
Yeah.
his girlfriend. Another band that came out of that era, right when you were working at DVE, which got labeled as grunge, but I always thought they were just a phenomenal band for what they weren't, which was being able to be pigeonholed, and that was Stone Temple Pilots.
Yes, exactly.
They were so. Just how could you classify them?
Right. But you go back to other bands, you know, like you said about Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi kind of got pigeonholed into the hair bands. Cinderella, same thing. Cinderella were such a great live band. Even the Scorpions. The Scorpions have been around forever.
They're iconic.
Yeah, they've been around forever, but they kind of, just because they and
did videos do that?
And Judas Priest, probably.
Yeah.
Where they kind of got pigeonholed into that. Even Kix.
Yeah.
Kix was nothing more than a cross between like AC/DC and the Ramones. And,
Right.
you know, then that all came along, and then they kind of got pigeonholed into that, which I never thought they were a hair band, because, you know, I knew them back in the early 80s, and hair bands weren't doing anything then. But
I remember their promotional stuff where it was in like Hip Parade, or usually in the corner of the page, and their hair was poofed, but it was the late 80s.
Yeah,
That was the marketing they were being pigeonholed into.
Yeah. Well, look at what they did to the Wilson sisters.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with the big hair and, you know, all that stuff. And,
Some of that stuff the music was really good. I know
Yeah.
it's almost like sugar-coated candy.
But I mean,
it's good.
It's either you're doing it for a video, to stand out in a video, or you're doing it because your record label pigeonholes you into that. If it means getting airplay and it means selling some records, if you got to look like this, you got to look like this. I know Nancy Wilson was dead set against that whole, you know, video stuff. I mean, she's a serious musician. So is Ann.
No question.
You know, but, you know, I think there's probably a part of that time frame in their career. They're like, ugh, not our, you know, maybe not really what we wanted to be doing. But, you know, sometimes when you get that check.
Yeah, well, of course.
Because ultimately, yes, you want to be happy in what you do for a living, and you want to share your music with people.
Yeah.
But if it means having to make a silly video to get more people to like you or to buy your records, you do what you got to do, I guess.
You were at DV until what year?
2002?
That's right, roughly. Yeah, so it was early 2000s. Yeah. So you saw the entire 90s rock scene at WDVE. While you were employed at DVE.
Right.
When something weird happened in 1996, you started to see some of these legacy bands coming back for reunion tours. Kiss probably led the way. With the Sex Pistols did it. There was 3 or 4 other ones that did. It was a moment in my life where I'm like, wow, I'm starting to get a little older. Like, these bands are doing reunion tours. The idea of a reunion tour really... It wigged me out.
Well, you think the Who?
Yeah,
in 92,
constantly
the
Who.
Kids Are All Right tour. You know, then the Stones started doing their stuff.
Yeah, the Stones were a big one.
Right.
That was a big one. And I think the Stones were I think the Steel Wheels tour was 89 or something like that.
Right.
But it showed to me, once I laughed my way through the reunion concept, it showed to me that the staying power of rock is unbelievable.
Sure.
Like no
Absolutely.
other genre there was, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I did think, though, that something also happened in the mid-90s in rock where the industrial thing kind of happened, or like bands like Korn, and it was hard for me to really wrap my head around that. I don't know if I was just a little more closed-minded toward it.
Right.
I accepted it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, the Korn, I don't necessarily call them industrial.
Well, not industrial. No,
Yeah,
that's
but
wrong.
I mean, when I think industrial, I think Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah,
I think
Rammstein bands.
Yeah,
like that.
Ministry.
Yeah, Ministry is big. Yeah.
You know, but I played Ministry back in the 80s.
I'm sure.
When they were, he was a dance band, Al Jorgensen. And then I've seen him a couple times in town the last couple of years. I'm like, holy smokes, this is not the same guy that, you know, did With Sympathy or, you know, Got to Work for Love or whatever. Yeah. But, I look at like Nine Inch Nails. I remember the first time I heard that record, my husband was friends with Trent's father. They had a relationship through what my husband does for a living. And he gave me a copy of the CD. And so I listened to it, and just hearing Head Like a Hole for the first time was like, wow, this is pretty intense. And, the whole album was just awesome. But, just getting to see that show and then seeing him and, 9 Inch Nails and Bowie coming together.
Yeah.
That was, to me, a perfect fit.
Yeah,
a perfect fit.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, but, the industrial thing, it's just everything kind of comes in waves, I think.
Okay.
And I don't know what's out there now that would be considered.
I don't know.
What is it?
Do classifications matter anymore?
I don't think so, because everybody seems to be doing their own thing. I don't, like we were talking earlier about Eddie Van Halen, I don't see kids picking up a guitar, playing a guitar because of
the icons.
Bob Smith in the Eric McKenna project, that type of stuff. I just don't see that.
Yeah, and I will tell you, from being in that business, music in general changed so drastically that guitar heroes, which I think were really important to that industry, or any musical instrument industry, Jimmy Page and Rita Peter Frampton and Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath.
Richie Blackmore.
Absolutely right. And I think now, and Zakk Wylde, I think Ozzy's guitar, but Zack's kind of like the last bastion of guitar hero. Now, I think Dave Grohl, to a certain extent, inspiring younger people to pick up.
And he's just so multi-talented he can play so many different things.
The first time I saw the Foo Fighters, I couldn't believe that was the drummer from the. I didn't put the connection there.
Like, and you thought, I don't know about you, but when Kurt Cobain passed away, it was like, oh, those 2 other guys, man. I gotta feel bad for them. What are they gonna end up doing? Working in a grocery store, or having to go to college and go back to college and learn how to be an accountant or something.
I think they're okay.
Yeah, no, they did fine. They did fine. Yeah, Chris Novoselic, I forget what he does. I think he's still in a band, but you have Pat Smear still plays out, and so I mean they've done very well. But like I said, without him passing away, we never would have had the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's if people are picking up instruments because of today's music.
I don't think so.
When Neil Peart passed away, what a tragedy that was, and that was really the beginning of the end of 2020.
Yeah.
As soon as that happened, it was like
that one hit me hard.
Kobe Bryant, and then all that was downhill afterwards. It was like, okay, whoever thought we'd be in this position?
You got any particular Rush memories? I saw every Rush show going back to Hemispheres.
Yeah. Grace Under Pressure was the first time I saw them.
Okay, 84.
The
start of the electric stuff for them.
The best stuff of Rush. Never had to wait in line to go to the restroom. I only say that because what's their big joke? Sausage Factory, right?
There's no women at the shows.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I was always there. I loved Rush. I loved Neil's writing, and just how eclectic everything was, and how in depth. Why
did they hit?
Maybe when I was younger, I didn't realize that he was writing all the music. Or they would come up with the music and then say, okay, here's the song, and he'd write the lyrics. When I was younger, I didn't really grasp that. But when you hear songs like Trees or, songs like that, it's just like, wow, okay. Talking about really society and, who survives by the person who's able to grow,
Well, I think it's interesting because it turned a lot of people, probably young people like myself, and the concept of philosophy.
Right.
Not that I just started immediately buying Nietzsche books or anything, but it broadened my mind, because all we had that time, which was wonderful, was the gatefold covers and the album sleeves and the liner notes and all the good tangible stuff we could hold on to
and read
and immerse ourselves
and read and learn, and like, oh wow, well, I didn't realize Steve Lukather played on that Hall & Oates song. I love that guy from Toto. Or hey, I didn't realize that Journey's Infinity album, they dedicated it to the guys from Skynyrd. Like, you don't get that now.
No.
I miss so much about. It's like I download.
I know.
Forget it.
There's nothing tangible.
There's nothing. I want to hold it. I want to feel it. I want to open it up and get that poster inside. And
that made the whole thing an experience, especially for a young person.
Oh, sure. Because you know what? It wasn't just hey, let's hit a button and it downloads. No, I worked at South Hills Country Club, so I could buy records. And I, if I wasn't able to drive, or brother would drive me down, I'd go in. Today's the day the new Journey comes out. I'm getting it. I remember Christmas gifts my brother gave me, exactly what albums he gave me. ELO's New World Records, Steve Miller's Fly Like an Eagle.
How cool is that?
You remember that stuff.
I can remember going and buying specific records. Like I went, with my confirmation money, and I wasn't allowed to buy the Kiss stuff, but I was able to get Rush archives and 2 of the Rush albums, and I could spend $70. It was amazing.
Right.
Why do I remember that? I
Sure.
don't know. I still have those.
Sure,
albums.
absolutely. I have all my albums. I have pretty much all of my ticket stubs, and I have every rock
is so
concert
cool.
T-shirt that I ever bought.
That
I
is
still
so
have all
cool.
those.
So kids have missed all that, really.
Absolutely. But that's the whole thing about music today. It's so different, and I don't know if there's memories attached to the music today like there was for us. And maybe just because we're getting older and we're you get sentimental and all that.
Okay.
But our artists are passing away, which is just terrible.
Terrible.
Because it is a part of the fabric of your youth.
It's been a bad year, though.
Yeah. But I mean it's I don't think kids have that now.
Okay, so
Or they maybe, and I don't think they care. I mean, think about this. When
Bingo.
you bought a record, Journey's Infinity, let's say, and you maybe say Wheel in the Sky was getting played on the radio back in the 70s. You got that record home. You listened to that thing over and over
Where it
and
grooves
over.
out.
You didn't pick it up and just listen to Wheel in the Sky. No,
The whole
you bought
thing.
that record with your own money, and you listened to it, and you learned every word from Patiently to Anytime to this to that. You read the liner notes, like I said, but now it's just one song, and that's all there seem to be releasing now. There isn't that whole.
Right.
I don't know what the word is. That whole experience of
Right. Right.
saving your money, having somebody drive you to the record store, knowing what day because you read it in Hit Parade or that this album's going to be out. We didn't have the internet.
I know. You're exactly
so,
right.
It was a big to do. It was a really big to do.
And it was funny how it's so interesting about how that all kind of weaved with a lot of uncertainty. You read it out of a magazine. They
Yeah.
could have had a misprint, but your whole life was based
Sure.
upon that potential misprint.
Sure.
And that's how we used to go see concerts. We'd drive to Allentown because it was in Hit Parade or they're on this date. We didn't call ahead. We just drove there.
Right.
And
Right.
but it all
Or-
kind of worked.
Eric, how many shows did you camp out for? Tons.
Oh,
I
my
would go down
gosh.
to the arena by myself.
Yes.
And camp out for
Yes,
tickets.
yes,
and
yes.
I talked
Think
about.
about that was a thing.
Well, here's the crazy
Right?
thing. My husband was in line. This was before we met. He was in line for the Eagles, the Long Run album.
Okay.
So he's in line. He's the first in line at the window, and they end up opening only 3 windows. The window he is in front of, they don't open. And he had been there all night. So he
So
met these
unfair.
2 other girls that were on and she says, please, you've been here with us. They got to know each other.
That's cool.
Lena is still one of our dearest
That is
friends
so
over
cool.
40 years later.
So cool.
And we see her at all these shows because she
Yeah,
still
yeah.
loves music just like she did back then.
Yeah.
Where you have that experience of meeting people and,
It's a unifier.
why are you there? Because you all want to see the same band,
It's a unifier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like a couple back then they weren't selling tickets a year in advance.
No,
It was maybe
no.
8 weeks out or whatever, and be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hey man, see you at the show." And then you have a couple beers and you're talking and, "Hey dude, man, how are you? How's been the last 8 months?" or whatever. And it's there was just something really special about music.
Yeah, and I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old and no interest. I mean,
Oh, that has to hurt. I don't have kids. Thank
yeah,
goodness.
not in-
I'd be really
yeah.
upset.
Well, they grew up in the guitar thing
Yeah.
with me, holding onto my legs. They grew up with it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the reason they don't, but just not a lot of the guitar thing just didn't wash. I tried, it just didn't
It's funny
stick.
you say that because I have a bunch of nephews and nieces, and on all the nieces I would take to see the Spice Girls, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, New Kids on the Block, all them, and they all remember those shows.
Yeah.
But it's just like none of them ever.
Just an event to them.
Yeah, but none of them like my nephews taking them to see shows. None of them ever were like, "Man, I want to pick up the guitar."
Yeah.
Like, really? Come on. Somebody's got to be a
Yeah.
musician in this family.
It's just
You
it's
know?
an event, and that goes back to the. And you got me there early, so let's go right to it. I ask a lot of my musical guests on the show, people in the either they're musicians or people in the music business. Is music now disposable?
Oh, absolutely.
You agree?
I
Because
think
you're the
so.
first person that's actually. I've asked that question a lot. You're the first person that immediately came and said yes.
I think the way people look at the younger people look at it today, it seems disposable, but to us, it's not disposable.
Right, but I mean today though,
like
the new music.
I wouldn't say it's no, because there's a lot of good music that's still being made, and I don't think it's disposable. I just think the whole premise of how kids get music today is disposable because they're not in it like we were in it. They
We're not
didn't read.
invested.
They didn't read the articles. about, hey, so-and-so's new album's coming out, and there's a picture of him and his girlfriend, their dog in a studio, and, and you read little things about him. Or I cannot not walk out of this place without mentioning the Mike Douglas show. I mean, I lived for that show. And I thought Mike Douglas, he's one of the reasons why I wanted to do what I wanted to do, because he was like, my mom and dad loved him.
Yeah.
But Ted Nugent's on.
Yeah.
And my mom is like, who is this crazy guy in a loincloth? I'm like, Mom, it's Sweaty Teddy.
Right.
And she was like, oh, well, he's not that bad. Or the Beatles. John Lennon and Yoko Ono would be on.
I saw Kiss there the first time.
My dad's like, oh, come on. And Toadie Fields.
Yes. Yes.
She was always on. I had no idea what her credibility was. Or, was she a comedian?
Oh my gosh, that's how I knew Kiss existed in this world, because I was watching I was forced to watch the Mike Douglas show with my aunt, and there's this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, who is this?
Toadie Fields?
Toadie Fields,
and then she's like bantering with Simmons, and
right.
I think they were just out of the gate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, exactly.
But Mike Douglas was something for pop culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he was doing the show in Philadelphia at that time.
I didn't know that.
He wasn't in L.A. He was in Philadelphia.
I didn't know
I'm
that.
like, hey, he's just across the state.
He's local.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you're a kid, you're like, local, it's Philadelphia.
Right,
That's 5 hours away, dear. But I mean, all the artists that he would have on were they were rock artists.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so cool.
That is
and
cool.
I think it was kind of a way for my parents and I to bond. Like,
bridge.
Like, oh, this is that guy you have your picture on? And like, yeah, Mom, that's Peter Frampton. Oh, okay, that type of thing. But I mean, talk about a guy who brought our contemporary artists onto the television show, and then our parents realized, okay, these people aren't as crazy as you think they are.
He didn't make them feel small or embarrassed.
No.
The ones before, I think it was Ed Sullivan.
Yeah.
He would bring the Beatles or the Stones on,
right.
or the Doors, and then make a snide remark about them,
right.
as they would go off
Mike
stage.
Douglas was always just Mike Douglas. You were the star. I'm just here asking the questions, and just, you be yourself or whatever. That's what I thought he was so good at doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was all about the guest.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was a good bridge, I think, to modern music. He ushered in a lot of modern music too.
Absolutely.
And made it maybe a tad bit more palatable to maybe our parents' generation.
Right. Or made it seem like, okay, Mom and Dad are watching now because Mom likes, Mike Douglas, but it's like, oh, okay, well, not too bad of a guy. Seems like
Saturday Night
good
Live
guy.
helped too in the
yes, absolutely.
in the beginning, when it really was about the musical guest.
Right.
It's
That's
amazing.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the reasons why I still tune into it today, is just to see the
music.
The music. Yeah.
It's a part of pop culture, though. But
right.
the disposable point, I think you nailed it. I think kids ingest music now differently.
Oh, than we did.
They're spoon fed differently.
Sure.
One song.
Right.
A single.
Right.
And then with no meaning, no attachment, no verbiage, no liner notes, and maybe a video, a rock video or a pop video, maybe. Videos don't even mean anything to kids anymore.
No. And you wonder, too, about the whole, are people playing instruments now?
No.
Or is a lot of that on,
started.
keyboards and things? I'm just saying,
Yeah.
back when we were looking at the liner notes, it was like, you knew who played guitar or bass or whatever, and all that type of stuff. And
it was real music. It was organic music.
Right.
And
whereas now it's just, let's just make one good hit, and then.
What's your thoughts on live music today? And I want to include some of the big bands. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there are some really big bands that are still touring right now, where there's some voice enhancements, some lip syncing, we saw live music, right?
Right.
If you were lucky enough to see Chicago, there was a 13-piece ensemble up there just like blowing your head off.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Or if you saw Black Sabbath, it was Tony Iommi ripping your face off with an amplifier. It was real.
Right.
And there's a lot of live music today is really more about the show, I think, than it is the musical
quality. And then there's
quality.
been a lot of stories of bands being enhanced.
Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts on it?
Van Halen having somebody, or Aerosmith having somebody below the stage that sings back up, or
did that stuff happen in the 80s?
Enhances Steven Tyler's voice. The only band I remember being lip synced was Dead or Alive. They played the Stanley. Was it the Stanley Theater Ball? No, Siri Moss Ballroom or Stanley Theater Ballroom, something like that. And I remember me and one of the other jocks were standing behind the board, and all of the pots are the things that your microphone, your bass, whatever. All of them were down, and we're looking at each other like, he's not turning his microphone up. And then when Peter Burns would say something, you couldn't hear what he was saying. So
interesting.
That was the only one that I ever recall that I thought was like definitely
There was
tracked.
rumors in the early mid '80s that Van Halen was piping in the background singing on some of their songs.
I would love to hear Michael Anthony just sing himself, just sing backup vocals of songs by the guy's got an incredible voice, but you never get to hear it because he's always that high voice that sings backup for Van Halen. But I'd love to hear what he sounds like singing those songs just by himself.
There's so much Milli Vanilli crap going on now, though. I'm such a skeptic anymore. I hate to feel that way, but
there's still good bands out there doing things. I'm like a big fan of 30 Seconds to Mars.
Familiar with them.
They years ago, I was cleaning the house and I was watching some concert on TV from somewhere, Ireland or something like that, and I'm watching, and Jared Leto's got this pink mohawk, and I'm like, wow, this guy can really move a crowd. And the next thing you know, he jumps from the stage to the top of a gate, like a fence. And
okay.
I mean, could have impaled himself.
Yeah,
and I'm like, whoa, Nelly. And then the next thing you know is he jumps into the crowd and they're passing him all around, and he's really dynamic on stage. And I'm like, that's pretty good. Well, then I can't tell you how many times I've seen them live. I've traveled to see them, and I'm like, wow, they're impressive. They're very impressive. They're a great live band.
When you first saw Stave Diving, I'm guessing you were. I'm guessing it had to be you were one of the first folks to probably see it in Pittsburgh, based upon the station you were working with and music that you guys were promoting. I'm guessing late '80s you saw it.
Yeah, probably, but
mosh pits. That kind of
87, 88, around there somewhere. 86, something like that, maybe.
What was your thoughts on that? Did it move you? Did it frighten you? Did it do anything?
Which is like, wow, dude, you're crazy. Because what happened? I would be that person who jumps off the stage and everybody would move aside.
That would be the fear I'd have.
Face plant it right onto the ground.
But that was something different to me.
Yeah, it was different. It was like, it created energy. And then now they do like the swirl where they all like smash into each other. I've never been a part of a mosh pit, I will say that. But
I haven't either. Been uncomfortably close a few times. But do you remember music getting angry at all in the early 90s? Did you ever view it as being angry? Bands like Pantera, just really aggressive rock where it would ever bleed over into the crowd. Did anything that ever disturb you at all, or is it pretty much just a rock show?
No, to me it's a rock show. I mean, every band had their, I wouldn't even say angry. Music is music, and sometimes if you're angry, it seems angry.
Okay.
If you're sad, it seems sad.
Yeah, I get it.
So
the only reason I bring that up is I was a fan of music, and then I ended up working in the guitar business, and then having artists with different flavors. Dimebag Darrell Pantera was one that we worked with at the tail end, the very end of his life, unfortunately.
Right.
And that opened me up to that fan base. But I had seen Pantera years prior, opening for Sabbath in '99, I think.
Right.
And I had never seen anything like that. I'd never seen what looked like an angry, aggressive crowd.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And I was in a PNC box watching this show, so I was safely away from it, but I was really like, wow, music? That's not a Kiss crowd. Like the Kiss shows from a couple of years prior did not look like that.
Right.
These were younger kids and really aggressive.
While they may be angry, I will honestly say this, that I would rather be hanging out with that type of crowd than somebody at an Eagles show or Fleetwood Mac.
Okay.
Simply for the fact that some of my worst concert experiences have been with those types of bands. Not people that are enjoying the music. It's somebody that has had way too many beers at the bar before walking into the place, and they get loud, they get obnoxious.
Got it.
I think it was Fleetwood Mac. Somebody kept hitting me in the back of the head. Like they were drumming, and it kept hitting me. I said, hey, 3 times, turn around. Dude, I know you're having a great time. That's fun, but can you stop hitting me in the back of the head? Well, then I said it one more time. I will have your ass tossed out of here. I'm like, do you see me drinking? No, I'm not drinking. So I'm not having the problem. You're behind me. And he was just like, a lot of people just like want to fight, or they want to talk. That drives me nuts. Seeing James Taylor at Star Lake and these 2 gals talking in front of me like, what a bad day they had at work because her boss is an idiot. And I look at my husband, I'm like, I can't handle this anymore. And he says, "Do you want to leave?" I'm like, "No." So I
Right.
grabbed my ticket. I tapped the ladies between the shoulders. I said, "Hey, ladies," I said, "I don't see your name on the ticket. So if you're going to continue to talk, why
Cris,
don't you
that's
go
great.
grab a beer and talk back there? Because
great.
I paid to see. I mean, you're paying an exorbitant amount of money
Yeah.
to see artists anymore.
Yeah.
I want to get my money's worth. We're not paying $8.75 like we did back in the 80s. You know, I mean, concert tickets add a zero to that 18075. You know,
Right.
They're expensive.
But the crowds are different in that way too. Like when we went to a rock show years ago, you probably wouldn't have had that problem. Oh, once in a while you'll see someone drink too much. But the
Right,
point was
right.
they were all really there to enjoy the show.
Right.
Now
Now-
it's an event, something to do on a Thursday night. I got free tickets.
or to be seen there.
Yeah.
Like I find that a lot of times back in the 90s with some hockey games and stuff.
That's
it's like,
interesting.
is anybody
Okay.
paying attention?
Okay.
You know, I mean, this guy is singing Fire and Rain, and these two are
Yeah.
yakking about how bad their boss treats them. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't like
that's
to be.
really
I don't like to
interesting.
be that person, but
You'll be that person when you need to be.
well, show respect to the artist. Nothing
Absolutely
irritates
right.
me more than when somebody's singing a song and people are yakking. Oh gosh, that drives me. Show some respect for the artist.
This is going to sound really off kilter, but I experienced that, and from that moment on, all the concerts seemed to be this way for me. I took my grandmother. No, I took a friend of mine to see Frank Sinatra's last show.
Wow.
And I'm saying it must have been like 94 or something.
Right.
And we got really amazing seats. And I just wasn't the biggest Frank Sinatra fan, but I wanted to see it.
Sure.
Right? But I looked around and people not paying attention. And there's the man struggling to get through it up there, right?
With his monitor.
It's quiet. Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
right. I think it was 94 maybe.
Yeah.
But I noticed the people around us. We were in the round. I was in the round. It was low. They were kind of like there, someone just to be seen there or something to do. They weren't really engaged.
Right.
And that
Right.
ushered me into looking at concerts very skeptically from that moment
Yeah.
on, and looking at audiences and saying, wow, this is a different audience than the 80s and 90s shows I
Right.
remember.
Right.
And now really it's that way.
Yeah, it's when I go to see a show, I'm there to watch the band. I can't tell you how many times even if I got free tickets with working in radio, have I ever walked out of a show? I stay till the end. Mm-hmm. But when people are disrespectful, that bothers me. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's just, especially when it's James Taylor singing Fire and Rain. It's like, come on, can you just pipe it down a
Yeah.
little bit, And I'm nice. I'm like, hey, ladies, shh, 4 times. Okay, now I'm mad, So but,
Yeah. You mentioned like drumming and hitting your back, and I just remember going to pretty much any Rush show and just
Oh, of
looking at the
course.
sea of
Everybody- I would-
air drummers, right?
I
It's
would have
crazy.
expected that at Rush. You want to beat me in the back
Not
of the head
Fleetwood
thinking
Mac.
you're Neil Peart, that's fine, but not Fleetwood Mac. And I mean, he was just drunk, and it was just like, oh, brother, But yeah, I've always said I'd rather be hanging out with the heavy metal people. I'd rather be at Guns N' Roses at Three River Stadium with Metallica and whoever, and be in that crowd than be with like the Jimmy Buffett crowds, because a lot of times it's for them it's a night out away from their kids. They let it loose, and that's fine, but just be respectful for the other people that want to
What's your
listen to
thoughts
the
on
music.
country music in general, personally for you? And then talk about the crowd differences, because I will talk about them. There's a big difference between rock crowds and even your so-called super rock country folks.
Right.
The crowds are different.
Yeah.
It's a different thing going on.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been to a country show. A lot of what I hear is Def Leppard with fiddles.
Okay.
I hear it. Come on.
That's pretty good.
I mean that's what country music's. It's bro country. You know what I mean?
Evolved into.
It's not like stuff like back like in maybe the 90s where it was
Yeah.
like Radney Foster and
I get it.
Rodney Crowell and
get it.
those kinds of art. I love Dwight Yoakam.
Yoakam,
Seen
yeah.
him multiple times.
Yeah.
Those types of artists. It's now more like I said, Def Leppard with fiddles. I don't know. It's weird. Sorry.
Fiddles, that's great.
I'll never get a job in
That
country
is
radio,
so,
I guess.
that is so great. Well, many years and many friends at Froggy Radio, great people, great folks. So I got exposed to that genre, and I'm not a country music fan. I'm just not. I think I know of Garth Brooks. I know a couple of his songs, but it's all lost on me.
Right.
I had a couple of photography gigs that I did over the past 7-8 years for the big shows in town, the annual shows, and Kenny Chesney was one, and I just don't get it. Not just musically. I guess there's a powerful pop show up there. I don't know if it's country music, but the crowds are simply there to drink, and I'm not really
Oh,
sure that
of
the
course.
bulk of them are really there for the music.
No.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, those types of shows it's an event. It's not about who's playing there. It's strictly an event. Yeah, and I've been to a couple.
How did that happen?
Kenny Chesney shows, and it's just like, wow. You walk out, and it's like, holy smokes, what a mess, And
how did that happen? Was there a turning point?
I have no idea. I maybe because there's not many stadium shows and not many country artists at that time were doing things. I think the whole country genre has turned into Jimmy Buffett. Like when I listen to country music today, it's all about drinking and lift kits on trucks. But a lot of it comes back to alcohol and drinking, which, fine. But I mean, is that the kind of crowd that thinks that, okay, Kenny Chesney's going to do his latest song and it's about drinking? It seems like a lot of the artists in country music are doing that.
Yeah.
And and I give Kenny Chesney credit because he jumped in on a fan base like Jimmy Buffett's fan base and kind of took it along and made it something very big and very successful for him.
Yeah, Garth Brooks to me was palatable when he broke. I mean, it was poppy, but it was like it seemed like there was a rock beat to it, almost like. Well,
he'll be the first person to tell you, loved Journey, loved all those bands. And the first time I saw him many moons ago, it was like a country show with all the rock.
It's Country
gizmos.
Kiss.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Not without the makeup, but I mean, it had, the fireworks and all that stuff, and the big sound and a cool stage where it wasn't just he was working behind the stage, like Journey would do or whatever back like on the Escape tour where they had the railing, and so they used the entire venue. It wasn't just not selling the seats behind.
Right.
He took, I think, what those elements that made rock concerts so cool and why we love them so much, and he implemented that into the country music.
Okay.
And people ran with it. And probably had never seen anything like that before. If you weren't a fan of rock music, but you loved all country, and that's who you grew up with, but you've never seen a rock show, well, just imagine this guy is amazing, right?
It was probably smart on
absolutely
brilliant on his behalf.
Absolutely.
What are some of the greatest live performances you've seen in this town?
Oh gosh, there's been a lot. Tommy Conwell and the Young Rumblers at Graffiti.
Okay, what year would that have been roughly?
Mid
era.
84, 94 maybe, somewhere around there.
Okay.
He duck walked on the upper level of Graffiti with his guitar playing. And he just blew my doors off.
Wow.
He was so good.
Wow.
So good. They were just they were like a garage band, like just like a fun bar band. But boy, he was amazing. Guns N' Roses opening up for Aerosmith. China Crisis, that was an alternative band.
Okay.
Julian Cope and Susie and the Banshees were one. Of course, the first time I saw David Bowie was like, wow, that was spectacular. Chicago, that was my first concert I ever went to.
What era of Chicago was
that? Was 1977.
Oh, okay.
And that was a couple months before Terry Kath passed away. Yeah. And I remember so many things about that show. It's my first show. I'm so excited. I smell pot, and I'm like, "What is that? What's that smell? It smells like burnt rubber or burnt rope or something like that." My sister's like, "Just never mind." And
that's great.
I just remember them coming out, and he was spectacular. What a great guitar player, a fabulous guitar player. Them being extremely good. Seeing Daryl Hall and John Oates for the first time in 1977. And I've seen them.
Rich Girl tour or something. That was the era they sang.
This would have been bigger than the Both of Us tour. So that'd have been like 96 maybe, something like that.
Okay.
And seeing them for the first time, and this is no lie, this summer would have been my 60th show with them. I've traveled everywhere to see them. Yeah, I'm a big Daryl Hall and John Oates fan.
Obviously so.
Most people know that.
Daryl Hall's voice is unbelievable to me.
Yes. And did you know he was up for the Van Halen gig?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah, between Dave and Sammy.
They made the right choice.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
For Van Halen.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. AC/DC, first time I saw them, I thought they were pretty incredible. There's so many bands, and like I say, when I watch somebody, I try to take away something that, maybe I'm not a fan of their music or their looks or whatever. Ronnie James Dio, first time I saw him, was
just... Doug Dio?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What a voice.
Not just a voice, but Twisted Sister opened up before him, and Dee Snider comes out, and it's F you, F you, F you, F you, the whole thing. And then Ronnie James Dio comes out and it's my friends. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then I got to meet him and he was just such a nice guy. Such a nice guy.
What a voice though. Like,
oh yeah.
I think I
and I mean, he's all of 4'11", really tiny, super tiny.
I think I snuck into the Heaven and Hell tour for Sabbath when I was like 14.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I want to see who this guy after Ozzy was.
Sure.
But man, The Last in Line was the song, his first or second solo record, I think.
Right.
That album, The Last in Line, right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable pipes, though.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And when
didn't even need that microphone. I mean, you probably would have heard if the mic got cut, you probably would have heard him.
But just knowing how tiny he is and how small, what a voice that comes out of that.
Yeah.
You know, obviously seeing your first Kiss show. The first time I saw Kiss, that was without the makeup. So that was a little weird for me because my husband's such a huge fan.
Yeah.
But
was it the Civic Arena? Like, was it?
No, I saw them first at the Stanley Theater.
Yeah. I remember that show so clear as a bell. And I kept saying to myself, it's kind of sad it's a band this big is playing in this little hall.
Yeah.
I remember saying that to myself.
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's like
the Kiss stand was on the floor. Like the Kiss sign was not elevated.
Right.
They set it on the
on
behind the drums.
Drums, right.
Remember,
I do remember
memory
that.
Right?
Yes. And I do remember. Who was that? Vinnie Vincent that played for them?
Yes.
Didn't his pants split in that show?
Yes.
I do remember that. Those are the dumb things I remember at shows.
I think Accept opened up for
They
them.
did.
Udo
Balls-
Dirkschneider.
balls
He swung
to the
out
wall,
on
man.
us.
Yep.
He swung out on like a wrecking ball.
Right? Yep, I remember that.
I remember pounding on the stage.
That is a venue I miss so much. I saw so many great bands at the Stanley Theater, and boy, I'm surprised they don't use that facility as more of a rock. I saw Live there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on their Secret Samadhi tour. That was like one of the times they used the Benedum.
The Benedum for rock show.
For a rock show.
Yeah.
And
Springsteen's played there a few times.
yeah, but I mean, you're talking live.
Yeah.
That's a great band.
No doubt.
Talk about a band that's they're amazing.
Right,
Love them.
Right.
But yeah, they used the Benedum for that show, and I was just like, wow, they were incredible. That venue just had such great sight lines and such great acoustics. Yeah, I miss that.
That Kiss show in '83, it was March of '83, and I remember, like, I could see it was so freaking loud in there. I remember I looked like there was parts of the plaster falling off the ceiling.
Loudest show you've ever seen? I'll interview you know.
Probably that night.
Really?
Yeah.
Alda Nova for me.
Alda Nova, where at?
Yeah, at Stanley Theater.
Oh, get out.
Oh, it was. I thought my rib cage was going to crack in half. It was so loud. You know, he comes out and his life is just a fantasy, and and it was like,
were you in
whoa.
front or like where were you positioned at?
But I probably
were you side stage?
Center stage, maybe 10, 12 rows back. But
Is that
it
how
was,
you do it even when you work gigs? Like when let's say you go up there and you talk before the show and you're
Oh no, I was in college. This was a college show.
Okay.
But I mean, it was. I mean, people were leaving.
Because it was so loud.
It was so loud, and I'm like, oh my god!
Yeah.
And I wear earplugs now to every show.
Yeah.
But I remember my husband going back to the sound guy and saying, "What are you doing? You're
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong. He's way too loud. I mean, it literally hurt your chest.
Yeah.
It was
gets
terrible.
scary a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Government Mule Warren Haynes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Saw him at the where Metropole used to be. Whatever they call Rosebud.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's just concrete and steel in that
Yeah,
place, right?
right.
Loudest, one of the loudest things I've ever seen.
Wow.
Too loud.
One of the best shows I ever saw at Metropole was Gino Vanelli,
Oh my
of all
God.
people. And I swear they took
Why was it one of the best shows you ever saw?
all day to get that sound just impeccable for
Okay.
him. Because I went in there like, oh, I love Gino Vanelli.
Yeah, what a place
But like,
to see a show.
yeah, it's like, it's gonna because the sound just bounced off everything because of like all the metal and stuff. But they must have worked all day on that. He sounded fabulous.
Really?
Fabulous. Any show I've seen with Warren Zevon, love him.
Oh, Warren Zevon was
Yeah,
great, man.
saw him at, I think it was at the ballroom of the
was great.
Syria
He was
Mosque,
great.
and he had Don Henley's backup band from End of the Innocents. And impeccable. What a great night of music that was. I mean, they were so good. The band was so good, because a lot of times he'll just come by himself, play his
Okay.
piano, play guitar,
Okay.
whatever. Or he'll have just a small group of people.
Yeah.
But he had Don Henley's band from the End of the Innocents album.
Wow.
From Don Henley's tour. And, oh, man, they were just incredible. What an incredible night of music.
I had two really wonderful shows, but they were embarrassing for the artists because no one came.
Oh.
And it was junior era. Do you remember the Joe Walsh show of '90 at the Syria Mosque basement? I think
Yes, yes.
No
He was
one showed.
hammered.
Oh, the opening act was someone related to the Eagles who went up and did acoustic. Do you I'm gonna peg your memory now? Do you remember who that
Don't
was?
remember who that
It was a
was.
songwriter for the Eagles who was touring with him. and was actually performing some acoustic, and it was
Say
wonderful.
J.D. Souther, but I've never seen J.D. Souther.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
But was he hammered that night? Because
If it's the same night I'm thinking, we went backstage to meet him, and he put his head down on the table.
The Confessor tour. No, that would have been years later.
Didn't talk to anybody.
Really?
And then his manager kind of came in and looked at all of us, and we're all like, what is the... Honestly, his head down the whole time. And he'd mumble a couple things, and then he got up and left, and we're all like... What just happened? And then my husband saw him at, I'm thinking this is the same tour. My husband saw him at Farm Aid.
Okay.
In Indianapolis, and saw him walking down the street and says, "Hey, Joe, Pittsburgh, last week or a couple weeks ago." And he turned around and goes, "Ma'am, I'm really sorry," and just walked away.
Is that what he said? Really?
He's like, I'm really sorry. 'Cause he signed a poster for us, and the poster
funny.
is him with like long hair, and it's very yellow looking.
Okay.
And he made some comment about, "Well, I'm really jaundiced," and he signed it, and then he put his head down, and everybody's like, what is going on here? Yeah, very bizarre.
Christy McVie came solo too. When
never saw her
when
solo.
she had left Fleetwood Mac, and I think it was a Syria Mosque, and I think 210 people showed her. So it was, but she, to her credit, ultimate professional, didn't cancel the gig, went through, played the whole
Sure.
thing. It was great.
I mean,
it was
you know,
great. It was great.
Those 210 people paid to see you, so
Yeah.
unless it's something where you're losing a ton of money, and if you don't cancel it, you know, it's going to be bad. Go on with the show.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've seen Joe Perry come out on stage with the Joe Perry Project and lean up against the Marshall amps with a cigarette in his hand, and the cop came out and wrote him a ticket right on stage because you're not allowed.
This wouldn't have been the Mancini's. Would have been. In the
No,
Rocks.
this was
Okay.
I believe at the Syria Mosque Ballroom.
Okay.
Or the Stanley Theater Ballroom, one of those two. And yeah, he came. Star Trackers was the name of the place.
Okay.
And he came out and gave him a ticket right there. I've seen, oh gosh, who was it? He fell asleep on stage. Mick Jones, was it?
Wait, what? He fell asleep on stage.
Who was it? I can't remember who it was.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, he leaned against the stage. He leaned against, and he was like passing out. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You know?
Oh my gosh.
Can't remember who it was. Oh gosh, no, it's gonna drive me crazy. I'll be driving home.
That's all right.
I know
That's
who it
all right.
was.
That's all right.
Yeah, but yeah, I've seen some real bizarre stuff.
Do you like small halls?
I do.
I saw Living Color there in like
Oh, yes,
89.
absolutely.
It was what was the basement of the mosque called? The basement or the ballroom?
What was Star Trekkers was the Stanley Theater Ballroom, the basement of the ballroom, they made it smaller.
Okay.
And then it was the Stanley Theater Ballroom. I was at that show. I was actually backstage, like kind of off to the side of the stage when Corey Glover wore those bodysuits, those
The crowd
surfing body.
insane.
Oh, it was.
It was insane.
And I remember him coming over, and he wore the high tops kind of undone, and he kicks his shoes off, and he looks at a gang of us from the station. And he goes, "Watch this," and he just starts running towards the end of the stage, and his stage guy just did this and catapulted him with one foot up into the crowd. And it was just, talk about stage diving. That was like, and to see that from my angle was like, wow, dude,
Yeah.
you could have broke your neck.
That band was a force.
Oh, yeah.
They were a
They were
force.
really
And
good.
They opened for the Stone Steel
Yes.
Wool Tour.
Yep.
And I think the venue there, or the stadium, you lost a little bit of of their power.
Right. I mean, they were good. They were really good. Yeah, I agree with
Joe
that.
Perry played his first time, I think, at Mancini's.
Might have
with
been.
the project. Yeah, that wasn't. I saw Queen's Rug at Mancini's.
Yeah.
In '84. Did
Saw
you ever see that?
Pat Travers at Mancini's.
Boom, boom, out goes the light.
Yeah.
Open for Rush. Remember that?
Yeah.
Pat Travers.
Yeah, Pat Travers. I saw him there, and then I saw him at the Icy Light Amphitheater.
Oh my gosh.
Where I was in the front row, and he turns around and he says to his band, "All right, let's boom boom their little asses off." And then he jumps. Then he starts into boom boom out go the lights. And I was like, "Oh, come when a song has that kind of feel for an artist, you kind of look like, oh man, he hates playing this." It's like, "Oh, they pay, they want to hear." I'm to the point now where I would give my right arm to hear Hall & Oates come out and just play a bunch of eclectic stuff. No Maneater, no.
Yeah.
If I had the money.
Right. To hire them to do it.
And hire them to just play, here's the songs I want to hear. I don't care. Just play anything other than your hits. I know them all. I would die happy, Because I always go to their, everybody's like, why do you keep going to see them? I'm like, because there's those times where they do pull out
Well, sure.
like 3 or 4
because
songs.
they get bored too, probably the same set list all
Absolutely.
the time.
Sure. You know, I mean, you look at Springsteen, like he always mixes it up all the time. You know, I'm sure that does get boring for them to play the same stuff over and over and over again. That's always what I'd like to ask an artist, but I would never dare do that. Say, what's the one song you wish you would never have to play again? You know, that's kind of insulting, but I often wonder that.
DVE went through a funky stage, I think, right before you got there. I'm a fan of the, to me, as a lot of my friends in the mid-'80s, we didn't understand what was going on because the DVE we knew growing up was probably the same DVE you knew as a young person, which was Zeppelin and Boston and Four and all these bands. And then it was not uncommon to hear Phil Collins solo stuff in 84 or maybe Bruce Springsteen. Which
Susu Studio.
Yeah, or She's an Easy Lover or stuff like that on DVE. And it seemed like DVE got their grip again later in the... Did you see an evolution there, or did DVE just kind of go with what the trend of music was in society? I know it's a loaded question, but it seemed like... And Hirsch kind of said, "Yeah, we went through periods of poppy eras."
Every radio station does, because you're trying to get, you know, ad revenue. You're trying to make money. You want the better ratings you have, the more people you can please with whatever you're doing. That means you can sell that book if you're number one in the market. You can sell that to advertising agencies, and then hey, all these clients come on board because they're going to get the most bang for their buck. You know, that's pretty much how that works. So, you know, I think a lot of radio stations go through that. It depends on the program director. It depends on their vision, what they think is most important.
It was just odd because at B94 you could hear the same Bruce Springsteen song that you could hear on DVE, and that was weird.
I know what you're saying.
This is DVE, you know, like
right. And a lot of times that has to do with you know, the program director and their vision on what they think the station should be doing sometimes, you know. So
maybe the X was a wake up call to DVE at that time. Was it, do you think, to some degree?
Double X, you mean?
Double X, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Because the program director at that time would call me and, you know, try to, you know, get me to tell him what songs we were playing and stuff. And I'm like, I'm on the air. I'm like, I don't have time to sit here and chit chat. I think I know who you are, so, you know, do your own homework. Oh yeah,
do your own market research.
Right.
Yeah, I can't imagine how difficult that job had to be, being a program director. I'm sorry, an outsider looking in, that seems like an incredibly difficult job.
No. And a good program director is at least somebody who's been on the air. You know, who's had, I think a good general manager, a good program director are people that have actually been a part of what it takes to be on the air. Okay. You know, because they have a better vision of what your job is like when you are on the air, and, you know, we're the connection to the people that listen. We're the connection to the people that, you know, pick up the phone and call about a song that they don't like, or, you know, like, let's say for Christmas, you know, Baby It's Cold Outside. Now all of a sudden that's you know, well, it's been being played since the 40s. It's like now we're just paying attention to this, you know. But you know, but how you handle that caller and how you handle that person makes a big difference, you know, and how the program director handles it. If it goes above you just saying, you know what, I'll be sure to let my boss know that your concerns about this song or this promotion that we're doing or whatever. I mean, we did some pretty crazy stuff at DVE, you know. You know, what was it, like somebody getting pregnant? That was something that we did. I remember flying a listener that we drove them in a limo to Cleveland to see Robert Plant, and then that person got to fly back on Robert Plant's private limo with Robert Plant back to Pittsburgh for the Pittsburgh show. How cool is that? I mean, we did a lot of really cool things, but you know, for some stuff, you know, maybe something we did was the Undie 500, for example. You know, people stripping down into their underwear and running around a bar, drinking milk, and people having to, you know, put deodorant on them or what. I remember. But I remember some stuff like that, you know, maybe people would be like, that's not very appropriate, you know, or whatever. So that's where the program director steps in and explains to that person that, hey, you know, here's why we're doing it. Whatever, you know. But I think when a program director has been on the air, or even a general manager has been on the air, they understand what our job is all about, and they have a better feel for it.
Okay. What are your thoughts on radio going forward in the year 2020? What is the medium What
say
is it?
2021.
Yeah, let's say starting in 2021. This year's a mistake.
I honestly, Eric, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It's the business isn't what it used to be.
Right.
It's but then again too, we're talking about people and how they listen to their music,
Mm-hmm.
and how they get their music, where they get their information from. Everything is on your phone. You know.
Yeah. Apps, right?
Right. Why do you want to listen to, this particular song or an artist that one radio station plays a lot of? Let's say Taylor Swift or The Who or Led Zeppelin or whatever, when you can actually download an app and listen to whatever songs you want to, or listen to your own music on your phone, or Sirius,
Well,
the
we
satellite
always had
radio.
choices, though, right? Radio fought through all of that.
Right.
It just probably wasn't easily accessible.
Right,
You had a cassette or you had an 8-track
Exactly.
player or whatever.
Yeah.
Downloading changed it, but it still took 20 years for it to get to this point.
Sure,
now.
absolutely. But with technology, that's where I think, while technology is great for so many different things, technology is, kind of putting throwing a real monkey wrench into radio, because they don't need me.
Yeah.
They can have somebody else do something from another city and voice track, and
that's happening a lot, huh? Like these
Mm-hmm.
radio stations are broadcasting remotely, or their things are taped, or just
sure. And there's a lot of people that are doing multiple radio stations across the country.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they're it's lost its personality maybe, or it's lost its I'd say personality, or the passion.
Okay.
I mean, like we just a bunch of us got together from DVE not too long ago, and it was all about, oh my gosh, do you remember doing this and doing that? And it was, we were a family. We went out, we bowled together, we went out eating together, we went to each other's weddings and all that type of stuff. And now it's like there's not that many people in a lot of radio stations anymore, so you don't have that camaraderie. You don't have when somebody's voice tracking from another city, we don't even know that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's it's lost a lot of its
technology's done that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, for every good thing technology can do, when you first start in radio, at least when I first started, we were playing records.
Yeah.
And then it moved to
unbelievable.
Cassette, or not cassettes, CDs.
Right.
And now everything's on a computer. So if the screw up happened before, screw up more than likely was on me or record skipping or whatever.
Right.
You couldn't leave the studio. Whereas now you can, the computer, once you hit the computer, you can walk away for hours.
Yeah, the whole thing's
if you wanted to.
programmed out.
Yeah, so.
There's something so organically beautiful, though, about being a listener to your favorite radio station, knowing there's another human being there.
Oh, sure.
And and there was screw ups, like a record would
Oh,
go.
absolutely.
Or you had to go to the bathroom, but you put the wrong record on, the wrong song, it didn't last long enough, and there was a dead space.
Right. Or kick into the next song, and while you're running back
what track is this?
back to the studio, you're hoping the F-bomb's not going to happen. I can't tell you how many times that's happened.
Yeah, I always wondered about that too. There were certain classic songs that you folks left them in. I love that.
Yeah.
Like the Who had a couple tunes
Well,
in
back
there.
then it was before the whole Janet Jackson thing. That kind of stuff kind of was able
really?
to slip through. Yeah, once the whole Janet Jackson Super Bowl thing came, that to me was that's when radio really took
Interesting.
a really bizarre turn, because everything was, we had to watch what we said. I had a slip up on DVE, which so many people know about. I'm not going to mention it, but if I would have, I was on the DVE morning show, and I was talking about Lloyd Bridges passing away, and he was in the television show Sea Hunt. And his name was Mike Nelson. So you do the math. But I wrote it on my script like that. That's how I wrote it, is what I said. And when I caught myself, everybody looked at me and was like, I was as red as that light over there. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Weren't you guys on delay?
And no, we weren't. No.
There was no delay?
No, we weren't on delay.
Like 5 seconds or anything?
No,
Wow, okay.
Not then, no.
Okay.
So,
okay.
but I wrote that on my script like that. I didn't do it to be funny. I didn't do
Got
it.
it.
I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah.
I was mortified.
Yeah.
And then I go to like a week or two later. I mean, everybody's talking about it. Oh my gosh! I'm like, they're calling me at home. I heard you today. I'm like, oh gosh, my mother wasn't listening, you know. And then here I'm in the St. Patrick's Day parade.
That's great.
And I'm up through this limo waving, and everybody's like, "Hey, Cris." Yeah. I'm like, "Oh my God." My husband's like, "Oh," he goes, "That's all you're ever going to be known for." Well, as it turns out, if that would have happened after the Janet Jackson thing, I probably would have lost my job immediately.
Wow.
There was no.
Wow.
They didn't care if it was it was an honest mistake, and that's how I wrote it. I didn't do it to be funny. It's just because I even like stumbled after I said it, and I'm like, and everybody looked at me. I'm like, oh my God, did I just say that? Oh, you know. And so yeah, that's one of my greatest radio moments. But nowadays, had that happened after Janet Jackson and the Super Bowl thing and the wardrobe malfunction,
That's interesting.
Everything changed. How we approach things. Now we were having to have meetings with, you know, we had almost like what's proper now with the Me Too movement, you know, knowing what's inappropriate and what's appropriate.
Yeah, well, the whole society's changed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that kind of was where I thought radio started to turn a little weird. You know, it wasn't as loose as it was before. Now things were, you know, managers and owners were being a little bit more, being a little bit more tight with us as far as what we were allowed to talk about or what we were allowed to say.
Yeah, it has to be different. I can't imagine Scott Paulson would have as much fun today, you know, on a daily, day out basis if he was doing that type of show, because the limitations have to be there.
Sure, absolutely.
They have to be there.
Absolutely.
My friend, this was incredible.
Well, thank you for having me.
I want to know if you can share how these wonderful folks can reach you. They can reach out to you.
You can find me on, I'm on Twitter at Cris Winter. That's CrisWinter. No S at the end of the name, no H in the first name. 412. So everything's 412.
Okay.
My Twitter account is that. My Instagram account is that. My Facebook page is Cris Winter in the Morning.
Yes.
And I didn't change that because
Took me a while to figure that one out, but I figured it out.
I didn't change it because so many people knew that's where I was, so I didn't want to mess it up and lose people. So, but I do most of my crazy posting about rock stories or concert tickets and just general things about. I do a lot of pop culture things, television shows and things like that, movies, a lot of nostalgia. And that's where you can find that. And that's Cris Winter in the Morning. It's CRIS Winter.
On Facebook.
On Facebook, yeah. But
I would love to have you back.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, if you ever want to send me an email, it's chriswinter412@gmail.com.
Cris Winter, no H.
No S at the end. Oh, you talked to Sean McDowell, Cris Winters. I'm like, Sean, that never happened. I never had anybody mess up my name until I started hanging with Sean. Now it's like Cris Winters. I'm like, no, it's just Winter, singular.
Go figure, right?
Yeah, so it's been the bane of my existence. Thanks, Mom, for taking that H out of my name. Appreciate it.
My friend, thank you.
Absolutely.
It was an honor to have you here.
Yeah, you have to have Sean come in.
I would love to have Sean. I'd like to have you both on. We got 2 other seats over here.
Okay.
We'll talk.
I'll work on that.
We'll talk.
I'll work on that.
All right, friends. We are
See ya.
out.
Bye.